Welcome back to the Next Level show. We're super excited to be back live. And now it's weird because now I know people are actually looking at me on screen, so I can't be slouched, like leaning back with my hoodie on. Gabe can't be naked. This is a big thing that this was kind of something that we had to fight for Gabe to put on a shirt. He's still bottomless, but he compromised at the t-shirt.
Is this an elaborate plan just to have me with a shirt on?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, this is
well played. Well played.
This is why it's taken so long to get to YouTube.
Which this is true. This is true. But my question or my argument is, I guess, if you can't be comfortable at home, where the hell can you be comfortable? Where else can you just walk around like in your boxers or in your underwear? And why is that a bad thing?
Well, we always said like you can always turn down the AC, but you don't. You like to keep it like super hot where it does require to be completely naked at the house. For the most part, I do have to have a shirt if I'm in the living room area because the vent's right there and it's cool enough where it's like, ooh, you know. But
I hate it when it's like right on my face.
It's luckily my roof is high, my ceiling is high, so it's like there's a good amount of space, but it still has a good potential, and it just gets me right in that perfect spot where I'm sitting. Like it's angled right there. But yeah, I'm sorry, man. We had to do this because if not, YouTube would knock us down and censor us.
This is true.
You had to do it for the good of the podcast and us.
Fine, whatever. I'll put on a shirt.
Boys, how you guys doing? Everything good on your end?
Oh bueno. What about you, Mike? How things?
Things are good. I've been kind of going back and forth with the thought for a couple of weeks now. I'm getting really close to trimming my beard.
Wait, hold on. Time out. When we say trim, like what are we talking about? Are we talking about like a little snip, like a quarter of an inch or something? Or are we talking about like chopping?
Like chopping, yeah. Not a clean shave. I would still have a beard. It would just be shorter. Preferably something that a 4-month-old could not grab onto with the strength of 1,000 men. That's really where I'm coming from here, because he's getting really aggressive with it, pulling and yanking. He's doing it to Jen as well, but she has the convenience of a ponytail, so she can get her hair out of the way. And for scientific reasons, I did discover last night that I can take my beard hair and pull it back and make a ponytail on the back side of my head, which I will not be doing here today. But I could do
listeners
that.
now that we have video, can you please like show the listeners, because your shirt's black, so you can't see the hair. Can you show us like?
Yeah, and something for scale, like your arm or something, just so. Oh, there we go.
Hold on.
You know what I mean, right?
I can take it and like cover most of my face.
Wow, so manly.
It smells good.
We would literally depend on you if we were like in the medieval times, for sure.
Yes,
I would look out for you. You would seem as the strongest and the one to lead.
Yes.
Yeah, probably. You're probably right.
You'd be holding an axe somewhere in the cold. And
that's where I belong. But in modern times with a 4-month-old, it's getting tough, you know? So I don't know. It's almost there. I mean, I could keep pushing and survive. I don't know how much longer. We're just gonna see. We're gonna see how it goes. That's really where I'm at, though.
Yeah, I had none of those issues whatsoever. I mean, it was always about like this, much to John's dismay, that I kind of keep it all the way down. I've tried growing. It does not go well. It kind of like just stops after a while. It just peters out and just says, I'm not going to grow anymore. So why bother? And it's itchy. I just don't like it.
We'll let the listeners decide, and they'll let us know if they think that, you look better with or without. Now that we have people that are watching us, it's super important to listen to our audience. But for the listeners, if you're watching this from a YouTube platform, make sure to go ahead and subscribe. If you like fitness content, you like random information and just fun facts, this is your place. This is your home. Go ahead and subscribe. Give this video a thumbs up. And if you're on the podcast platform, make sure to subscribe. And also, for all you, Mike does a fantastic job at doing the show notes and the timestamps exactly where we cover each topic that we're going to cover today. We have a couple. This is like our Friday type episodes where we kind of cover multiple. Not in so much depth, all of them, because we want to get through as many as possible questions that we get asked through our social media page. And if you ever want to do so directly to us, hit us on Instagram at the Next Level Show. That's where you can drop a question. We can always answer it on the show and give you a little shout out. But fun fact, this is something that someone sent me actually. A restaurant in Malaysia has a discount system based on how thin you are.
I've seen this.
Have you?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's got it's got little cutouts out front, and you got to like fit through a certain size, right? Have you guys seen that?
Is it like, those
Yeah.
like obstacle course things where it kind of, you've seen that show where there's a cutout and it kind of comes to you and you got to, fit in that spot or have it go, or else you get knocked down by it?
Yeah, kind
haven't
of.
seen
So they basically have like I mentioned studs on a wall, and it's like this one's 16 inches apart, this one's 20 inches apart, this one's 24 inches apart, and you got to fit through whichever one. And that gives you your price basically. I've seen that before. That's actually like that would never fly here, but
I was gonna
I like
say,
it.
what do you think about that? Like, is this something? Because this is something that can be positive or negative for the people.
Did it
Is this
say
some-
like the breakdown as to what, like, is it an increase if you cannot fit? Is it if you need like a bigger spot, do you get charged more? Do you get charged less? Like, what's
Well, based on
like,
what
how
I'm
does it work?
reading, that's kind of looks like what's going on here. They have I have the link, but I wasn't able to go through the whole thing. Let's see.
yeah, as far as I understood it, it was more expensive for bigger people. That was my
So basically, the thinner you are, the higher the discount, basically, and it looks like you get like a voucher back, based on if you spend X amount, you get like X amount, in return. It's there's little incentives to be at a certain size, but nothing that shows necessarily an increase. It's just that, hey, if you're able to go somewhere and get some money back, hey, you gotta, like, if I get 50% back, that'd be awesome.
Well, see, here's why that makes no damn sense. So if you were to go on it, right? What do you think? You would get the cheaper price allegedly, or on the cheaper end, but wouldn't you be able to throw down like a good amount, like all three of us probably?
Yep.
So do they really win?
Well,
I think
when the
so.
Next Level Show makes it and gets to Malaysia, where we're gonna eat them under the table, but until then, I mean, most people probably pretty average amount of food that they would eat. Bigger people, I think on average, bigger people tend to eat a little bit more. I mean, I think that's a fair generalization to make.
It's a fair assumption.
Yeah, even though, looking at like world record eaters, skinnier people tend to do better because they have more room to grow, but they're more specifically training for that. So I don't remember the Japanese guy's name off the top of my head, but barring him showing up, the hot dog guy.
Oh, Kobayashi,
yeah. Barring him showing up, it's probably a business model that, first of all, is getting them worldwide recognition, because that's in Malaysia, and we're talking about it here in Florida, and now we're talking about it on a podcast and YouTube. So there's a little bit of like good publicity that goes into that. Well, whether or not it's good or bad, it is good publicity, but I don't know. I don't really see a problem with it. I think it's clever. I think it's clever marketing, and I'm assuming they are doing well business wise. So maybe it does make sense from their perspective.
This is, I mean, obviously we don't see this happening here, but what's happening, I think around the world is the fact with airlines. If you're at a certain size, you technically have to buy two tickets.
Yeah.
Which is, it's expensive. It can get expensive to be at that level. So it's like, it's definitely something to consider. Like it's kind of also showing us where we're at and where we're going. We have to make modifications. Certain seat sizes need to be either modified or have to purchase multiple, because even then that wouldn't be comfortable if you think about it. You're literally not fitting in and it's unfortunate that people get to this point, because I mean you got to take care of yourself. You can't let yourself get to a point where it's extremely challenging, and if you are, I mean, there's always ways to work back, but I can't imagine going somewhere and then having someone to tell me, oh, you can't sit here. or oh, you have to buy 2 movie seats, or you have to buy 2 plane tickets. You have to, or you can't ride a ride on a theme park because you don't meet qualifications, not by height but by size,
Yep.
out of safety, which is before. Obviously now we live in a time where a lot of people are in this situation. The percentage continues to increase, but that's why we're here. That's why we're here, trying to spread some good information, make people aware that this is a reality, and that way, hopefully, this kind of motivates you to go into the right direction. Take control back of your health, of your body, of your mind. That way, you can not ever be in a bad situation like that. It's just kind of uncomfortable, and it's silly that to be discounted. That'd be, what's the point at that point? But the company might be losing money. If someone like us go and eat, but is that common? Probably not. It's debatable.
Well, hey, and then I guarantee you there's at least one person out there that had to go through the wider part to get into the restaurant that took it as a challenge and started trying to lose weight so that they could see how far down the measurements they could get. I mean, there's at least one person that has done that for that exact restaurant. Because that's where my mind went. I mean, if I were in that person's shoes where I'm all the way down here at the largest size, and I'm getting penalized for it, and it's kind of putting it right in front of my face where I can see it, that's gonna kind of light a fire in my belly in a certain type of way. Maybe that's just me as a person, but I'm gonna take it as a challenge.
Well, to your point, you said it's either positive or negative, right? So one, that would be a positive for it. Negative would be, just people feeling some kind of way about it, or kind of like to my point of you can't, while on the surface level, you might think that someone thinner might not eat as much, but you can't really base it solely on that. So positive, negatives, I mean, on the whole, who knows if it's beneficial or profitable for the company to do this? Will they lose business? Will they gain business? I mean, I have no idea, but I go like that.
Well, and also, I mean, think about Malaysia as a country. But they probably get a lot of tourism, don't they? Mm-hmm. I mean, from what I understand, Malaysia is a beautiful country, and
yes.
From what I understand, that would be a very almost like a destination wedding type place for maybe a group of Americans to go, or people from around the world. I also happen to know, tends to be Asian countries and Asian populations tend to be a little bit thinner than Western populations. So maybe it's almost their way of charging more for foreigners and charging less for people that are native.
Locals. Yeah.
I mean, and that could be part of it. Because, there's the stereotype is that, Americans are fat because we are pretty overweight across the board, but it's not surprising that would be something that was exploited in some way, shape, or form by a country that gets a lot of tourism from us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. That would rise a shitstorm here in the United States, just because I mean, people would be suing, people would be canceling, people would be going after these companies. But I mean, technically, if it's a privately owned, they can do whatever they want.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, that when it comes to stuff like that, it's a very delicate situation where you're gonna be dealing with a lot of bullshit. But to switch gears into even a more controversial subject, and this is kind of stuff that we like to touch the rails a bit. This is part of the show that we enjoy, kind of just having these open discussions. If you're someone that doesn't like this, then you probably get to the wrong spot. But if you're open-minded and like to hear, we're not ever coming out here and saying like, we are right and this is our way. But this is stuff that I think that conversations that need to be had on a platform. Especially that this is kind of in our realm with physical activity, sports, stuff like that. Transgender in sports. I know it's a huge topic of debate for a lot of people. There's so many ways that people like to come across this. The reason that I saw someone on Instagram, another personal trainer that lives in the other side of the world, and he has a large following. So I know he's probably either getting a lot of backlash or a lot of, I don't know, people that are on the same page with him. I kind of look at it like I'm kind of siding him with this because he was very good at his delivery. This is all what I feel matters is how to articulate yourself in this point. And you're not coming at it. We're not coming at it from a place of hating anyone, and in particular, we don't. I've trained people that are transgender. I also know people personally that are, and I know them personally. It's like, we talk, we communicate. They're, at the end of the day, they're people. They deserve to be treated with respect. And I'm not all against that bullying shit, treating people poorly. But when it comes to sports in particular, just to keep it on, this particular topic, there have been issues. It's growing because now a lot of the records are being broken by a transgender woman, for example. It's not as common when it's a transgender male, men, just because we know that the hormonal difference is a real thing. This does play in a lot in our abilities for our strength, stamina, size. All that does matter. And to say it doesn't, I think it's a bit ignorant personally. But looking at it, it came from a Olympic lifting transgender athlete broke the record in the women's division for that class, whatever the case may be, and it caused some issue. This has been a problem where it's like, should they continue to allow this, or completely take this away, create a different division? This is all open for debate. They have all the issues, like especially in running events. You see a lot of women just trans women just destroying the records, and as well as mixed martial arts or any type of combat sports. Very evident. You can see the discrepancy. It's very obvious, and it's not that women are incapable, but when it comes to apples to oranges, a male typically is much stronger than a woman. And especially when it comes to combat, impact, strength, fast twitch muscle fibers, you name it. This girl basically got her eye socket broken in the first round of this fight. This probably wouldn't have happened as easily or as quickly or even at all if it was against another woman, depending on the skill level, because you could argue, force of impact, all that stuff. You hit if that's why I think there's even, like, I'm gonna get a little bit trippy here, but there's even laws, like, obviously if a woman hits us, it's a little bit different than if we were to hit a woman. Let's just keep it real. But in this case, in the context of transgender topic, I can understand why there's a lot of women that are protesting against this and upset about this, because you're taking away probably the dreams of a girl that wants to eventually get to a high level, and then you have someone that after puberty switches over and then just dominates that division. What do you guys think?
I mean, I don't have, I'm not planting my flag on any place in this, because I can see from both sides. I can see from, women protesting and saying, no, this is wrong, because to your point, they're taking someone else's place, that someone that has what may seem to be as an advantage. But we're not talking about someone that just all of a sudden decides to, put on a wig and that's it. I mean, they full on, this is not some type of, whatever kind of, procedure that you can just do over the, from one day to the next. This is complicated, pretty damn life altering thing that you're doing to your body. Right. So because of that, I do see it's not, just someone you can just, like I said, just throw on a wig and they're cool and they can just join in on this in the women's division. So because of that, I do see that it is a decision, an impactful, important decision that these individuals have made. And if they want to do that, go ahead. What I'm thinking is maybe I'm not too sure as far as how the testing goes or how long the process is, but there should be some type of you test them and say, okay, making sure that their testosterone level is below, a set amount in order for them to compete in these type of sports. And then to your point about the in the track division, I think I remember watching this video of let me see, the individuals were Terry Miller and Andrea Yearwood, transgender female runners who recently back then, they placed first and second at the Connecticut State Track Championship. And then again, in weightlifting, I've for sure seen that as well. It's just, I can see both sides, and I can see it's a very delicate gray area where there is no black and white answer. So no answer.
Yep. I kind of agree with you, Gabe, to some degree. I'm not really planting a flag. I don't really have a horse in this race, to be just completely honest. I'm a kind of, if it doesn't affect me, I don't really care kind of person. Not to sound cold, but it's just not in my day-to-day thought process. I've got other things to worry about. So I did want to look this up because I think this is an interesting point. Women were first allowed, and I'll use the word allowed because that was part of the article, in the Olympic Games in the year 1900. I don't know exactly when the Olympics started back up again, because we know they came from the ancient Greeks, and it was primarily, as far as I understand it, naked men competing against each other for the glory of gods and men. It became a more recent thing.
Gabe competed there too.
Yeah.
I was just in attendance.
Yeah.
I did not compete. I would
He
have
just
lost.
went for he just went for the nudity. That was it.
Actually,
For the show.
on that note, I do know this. This is a little fun fact for you. I could be completely wrong. I seem to remember this from my history classes. Only men or single women were allowed to attend the games back in ancient times. If you were a married woman, you were not allowed, with the exception of one of the goddesses. She was allowed to show up because she's a goddess or something or other.
Hera.
Maybe Hera or one of the other ones. I don't really know any of the Greek gods anymore, but either way. So the Olympics kind of came back at a certain point, and we started competing in modern sports, golf and skiing and whatever else. And around the year 1900, they created a category for women instead of combining everybody and just saying everybody competes in the same games. They divided it up. Maybe back then it was for some not so nice reasons, because we know, women's rights wasn't really a thing back then, and there was a lot of room for improvement in the year 1900. So
a bit.
At that time, it was probably with ill intentions to keep them separate. But as we kind of are going through, and I'll pull up some numbers for reference, there is definitely a difference between world records for men and women. Some of them are massive, some of them not so much. So here's a couple just for reference. Now, this one actually stands out to me as very, very interesting, because in swimming, which we'll call a pretty intense endurance type sport, if we take a little bit of that endurance out and just look at the 50-meter freestyle, which I'm not a swimmer. I don't know exactly what freestyle means. I'm assuming it means you can swim however you want to. The difference is only 3 seconds. So men have 20.91 seconds and women have 23.73 seconds. So it's not that big of a difference. But as you increase the distance traveled, it gets to be a much bigger difference. So a 1,500-meter freestyle swim, the difference is just shy of a full minute. Men at 14:31 and women at 15:25. So as you increase the distance traveled, it seems that men can sustain effort for a little bit longer. Do with that information what you will, but there's definitely a difference there. As we transition away from endurance, there is, hold on, I got to find this other one that I thought was pretty interesting.
I thought, while you're looking for that, I thought it would be the other way around, where isn't it generally speaking that females do better distance-wise or endurance as comparable to men?
That's kind of what I thought as well.
That's what I thought too. But I think just overall, as far as their training, when they come to their own training, they do well. Women do very good in high rep schemes and endurance style training.
Yes.
Men do better. Like typically, we obviously can build larger muscles as a result. That's what we train. We do very well in strength training, like stuff.
Yeah,
like short explosive movements.
So let's look a little bit more at those short explosive movements, because that was what I thought would be the biggest difference. And in some of them they actually are, and some of them they actually are not. So do we all know what a shot put is?
Yes.
Okay. So a shot put, the difference is only half of a meter. So about 1.5 foot difference. That's not that big of a difference. When you look at the javelin though, the difference is 26 meters. Men, it's 98.48 meters. Women, it's 72.28 meters. So that's a pretty big difference. Comparatively, I mean, both shot put and javelin, you're throwing something. It's just a matter of what you are throwing. So I thought that was a pretty interesting one. The other one that I really thought stood out was Olympic powerlifting. That's where my mind immediately went. Olympic powerlifting is supposed to be the strongest people, right? I mean, we're in the Olympics, we're in powerlifting. These should theoretically be the strongest people at these lifts. Maybe there's some exceptions to that statement, but if you look at the 56 kilogram category for both men and women. So I think that's what, like 120 pounds or something like that. I didn't do the math. The difference becomes pretty exaggerated. So for the, what is this? A snatch. For the snatch, a man can do 307 kilograms, which is 600 something.
7 something, I think.
Yeah, something like that. And for a woman, it's 212 kilograms, so closer to 400 or 500 pounds. So there's a couple 100-pound difference in the same exact weight category. So, and I'm not saying this to plant a flag on any one thing, because I tried to give some examples where they're actually kind of close, but in some of these, there's a significant difference. And these are the top level of these sports. So maybe up here, it's not as big of a difference, but if you take it down a little bit, maybe go to like college or high school level, where we're not looking at top level, we're looking at 50 percenters, 60 percenters, the difference is going to be that much bigger, especially considering, an 18-year-old in high school, his blood is 100% testosterone at that point. So he is primed for power and output and energy. And women, it's just not as available. So there's going to be a bigger. Go ahead.
That's what I wanted to say too, is when you're giving these stats, these are top level athletes, correct?
Yeah.
So it's like you're already talking about someone that's reaching their limits as far as like the performance aspect of it. So then you have someone that comes in and changes over, and they compete, and then they break that record that woman probably strived years to be able to break and tap into that potential. She barely made it, was never able maybe to maybe replicate that again. Then you have someone that just completely shatters that. I know that's where the problem lies and why there's this debate and issue. If I was a woman that was working my ass off to finally be able to compete at the highest of the highest level, then we have someone else that comes here and they used to be a man. They come in and compete and they crush me significantly, even if it's by a second or 3 seconds. It's like, dude, like I literally am at my potential, my pure limit, my peak performance. It's just I can see what if I was a woman, I'd be feeling some type of way. I mean, it's not something that I'm, like you said, we're not in this world, we're not invested into it in that way. But it was just an interesting thing to think about, because from time to time again, you see these articles pop up and this conversation comes up. I mean, what is the right answer? I don't know. Should they not be able to do these things? Not really. I mean, but when it comes to the competitive level, I think there's room to kind of make some decisions here. And it's not to discriminate or hate or, to single out a demographic, a population to just say, you don't deserve this, this, and this. It's like, let's make this, if you want to compete, let's make this legit. They make this another division or something, because they do the same shit for other sports. They create subdivisions in the same division just to have more options, which this brings more profit and more ability to produce, expand the sports, to make them more interesting, to sell more, whatever. And this is from a business perspective. So I think that's my personal stance on it. I feel like that would be more legit, if we're talking about fairness. But that's just my personal take on it.
It probably just needs a little more. Maybe it just needs more individuals in order to warrant a separate division, right? Because if you have two, okay, first and second place. But if you have a good amount, then you can.
Correct. I agree. It's a whole thing. But another thing that came to mind, I think that Dr. Mike could take the reins on this. Question that we got asked on our Instagram, my Instagram page. I put a little Q&A thing. This is one of the good ones. I'm like, ooh, this is actually interesting. We haven't talked about it. Nicotine by itself, is it harmful, or does it help performance? Does it harm performance, or does it improve performance? Nicotine alone. Mike has more knowledge on this stuff and nootropics in general, because you take elixirs and all that stuff on a regular, pretty consistent basis. So what's your take on this, Mike? I know my personal thing is going to be short. I know that there are some studies that support there's some cognitive boosts when it comes to nicotine itself. Obviously, when people smoke cigarettes, there's probably a lot more negative repercussions that come with it, and or chew it. There's negative repercussions that happen. This is obviously stuff that we've known for years now. Before, not so much. So smoking was actually a trend, and it was just part of it. Part of social events and everything. Obviously, the tide has changed, but people still do it. But by itself, there is some stuff that is supporting that. It's actually pretty. It has some little benefits.
Yeah. So to clarify, nicotine is the active ingredient in tobacco products or vape products or anything like that. I happen to use like nicotine. I think they're technically called lozenges, but they're basically little like nicotine mints. And you suck on them; they give you a little bit of nicotine. They come in 2 milligram, 4 milligram. This isn't an advertisement for Nicorette or anything, but I think it's fair to say this should be fairly obvious for most people that if you're talking about just nicotine, there's a difference between just nicotine and tobacco, smoking cigarettes, chewing tobacco, Red Man, Copenhagen. Those kinds of things, any benefit that you're getting from tobacco is immediately outweighed by the negatives that you're getting from tobacco, the tooth decay, the lung cancer, the everything. So looking through the very narrow scope of somebody just getting nicotine, there are some pretty good benefits to it. First of all, the one that appeals to me the most is that actually it's technically considered to be a nootropic. So a nootropic is a substance that boosts brain activity in some way. Some of them have a neuron producing effect, such as like lion's mane mushroom, that literally helps your brain make new connections on a cellular level, thereby kind of helping improve your memory and performance mentally and things like that. From what I understand, nicotine is more of a energy than a neurogenesis type thing. But as for performance, I think that's also an extremely interesting thing to talk about, because if you're looking at just nicotine without all of the other stuff that comes from tobacco, there's a spike in adrenaline that you actually get if you were to get a surge of nicotine into your system. There's a spike of adrenaline. That adrenaline allows your body to release a little bit more glucose. You get a little bit higher heart rate. You get a little bit heavier breathing. There is a little bit of that mental high that comes. That's what people are literally addicted to. But I mean, if you're looking at this through a scope of like, I'm going to take this as like a pre-workout and get a little bit of adrenaline and glucose released, and my heart's going to be a little bit faster. That's a pre-workout supplement. I mean, looking at it objectively, it's just got a bad name, in my opinion. But what do you guys think?
So just go to a straight pre-workout instead, if that's your intended use of it.
It could be, yeah, absolutely. Okay. That's a fair argument. Absolutely,
that would be my argument.
Yeah,
I guess if you can use it and if there's some benefits to what activity or whatever you're trying to accomplish, sure. But when it comes to training, typically most people do better with a little bit of caffeine, maybe some beta alanine, and some other type of ingredients, another performance enhancers that are natural, you're just basic breakdowns of certain chemicals or molecules, aminos, whatever you name it. Creatine, stuff that's going to actually help you with the gym. It's going to be different than a nootropic that's for cognitive function. Let's say if you're trying to run a podcast or work with people, or you have a meeting and you want to feel a little bit sharper. Probably these things have its place, but obviously anything that you abuse and overuse start having negative repercussions. Like I think like anything, especially you can use this argument for caffeine. If you overdo caffeine, you can have the negative effects from it.
Yeah, I was just about to say that caffeine is in a same vein. I mean, caffeine is the most abused drug in the world. We are all addicted to it. Everybody on this show, most of the people watching, most of the people listening, in some way, shape, or form, we're addicted to caffeine, which I don't remember this article and this rabbit hole that I went down very much, but substances that end in INE tend to share a lot of properties. Caffeine, nicotine, they're not so dissimilar. They're kind of categorized together.
I like that.
There's other ones that I can't think off the top of my head, but another little fun fact for you: nicotine actually does cause a increase in dopamine in your brain, which is the addictive part. Dopamine is the pleasure molecule or hormone or whatever you want to call it. Other things that you can go to for a dopamine kick include, but are not limited to, cocaine and heroin.
So does masturbation count?
Probably in a backhanded sort of way. Yeah, I would imagine. But I mean, but to just make like an actual argument out of that, I mean, comparatively,
in kind of way.
the risks compared, the risks of taking just nicotine, not tobacco, just nicotine, compared to cocaine or heroin, there's a pretty big fucking difference. I shouldn't have to say this out loud. So, I mean, if you are looking for a little bit of dopamine in your life, then maybe nicotine is a fairly decent option.
I like
or you
it.
can just,
Get a hug from someone.
it also, it comes from skin to skin contact and other things as well. So, yeah.
All right. Well, the next thing, last top subject for today is covering the differences between evening training or morning training. Is there a difference? Is there? We've did an episode in depth on the podcast. I don't know, probably 100 episodes ago by now, on this particular topic, but it's definitely worth revisiting because I know this is something that we work with people usually in the mornings before work, or after work in the evenings. This is, how personal trainers' lives usually run, unless you are at the point where you just train either a certain block of the day and that's it. Well, kudos to you. But this is very common. I'll go first and kind of say that there are some scientific benefits that show, studies that show that there is some benefits to training in the mornings, boost in mood, the endorphins you get from training, all that stuff, just to kind of energize yourself. Some people will have, performance increases in the morning. It just depends on the person. And then there's also studies that are supporting the benefits of training in the evening times and the pros there. Obviously, we did an episode full in depth on the cons of each and the pros. But just to kind of sum it up, there are studies that are going to support both. In our experience, like anything we do, this is when it comes to the best form of cardio, best training program. It kind of goes more based on the individual and what they can adhere to most. They're going to do it more consistently. That's usually what's going to be better, because someone says, oh yeah, training in the morning is the best time. You get to stay started, you have fresh whatever energy, but you hate waking up earlier, you already struggle to get up for work. It may not be the best because you start to skip workouts and all that. If you're someone that says, oh yeah, for strength and performance, and it's better to train in the evening because you're more fed. If you always make excuses after work because you just want to go home, or you have a lot of responsibilities with family and stuff, and you start missing a lot of workouts, probably not the best avenue. But that's kind of my personal take. Do what kind of works best for you, boys.
Yeah, whichever one works for you. If you have the option to work in the morning or at night, are you more of a morning person, more of a night person? Then you already have your answer as to which one to do. However, if you're in a situation where, let's just say you work the night shift and so you have to train in the morning, but you're not a morning person. Well, if you want to train, that's kind of like what you have to do. Conversely, if you have like the other way around where evenings are open, then if you're not a nighttime person, then that's what you would kind of like have to do. So it's just whatever works for you.
I agree. I'm not going to repeat both of you. It's whatever works best for you. I mean, maybe there's some benefit to one or the other, scientifically speaking, hormonally, whatever. That's not going to apply to most of us. So just do what you can do. You do you.
Do you? Exactly.
Yeah.
I love it. But no, yeah. And just to sum it up, like I said, there are benefits to both. Try both. See what do you like? What works better in your schedule? Some people notice if you're used to training more in the afternoon and evening, you may notice when you switch over at the beginning, you're going to feel like maybe a decrease in your performance, maybe your strength, maybe your energy. Don't dismiss it right away. Like, oh, this is stupid. Let me just not do this anymore. Give it at least a week or two of consistency and see. You usually will adapt. And I'll tell you from personal experience, there was a time where I had to do the switch of training in the mornings. It's just kind of how my schedule was at the time. I noticed I was missing a lot of afternoon workouts, and that's usually when I would train. So I did something to kind of reset myself a couple of years ago, and I did the mornings. And at first it was kind of hard. But I would say that after a couple of days, I felt fine. And it felt great to do something different. And then I don't do it currently right now because I would have to start extremely early. But that's just kind of how my personal take on the whole thing was. Closing thoughts?
Do you? Or the more vulgar version of it is go fuck yourself.
Hey, go fuck yourself.
All right, boys,
Hey.
wrap it up for us.
Speaking of, what do you call a bull that's pleasing themselves? It's called beef jerky.
Wow,
Go
that's
ahead,
a great
Mike.
way.
Oh, that's a tough one to follow. All right. What word is always spelled wrong?
Wrong.
Damn it. Okay.
Sorry.
You win this round, Gabe.
It's rare.
That's the most disheartening thing when someone actually guessed what you're trying to ask.
This is
I-
true. This is true. This is
It's
true.
like I think I asked something and Mike actually got it a couple episodes ago. So I'm like, damn it, I thought I had him. But but yeah, Mike's the doctor in this situation, so he's too smart for my own good. Well, listeners, if you guys like this information, you guys like the podcast on the new YouTube channel. If you're watching it from here, make sure to go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. Give us a thumbs up so the video does well and it gets around. Share it with other people. Same thing with the podcast platform. Subscribe. We drop about 3 episodes a week, and let us know in the comment section and or review section of what you would like to hear, or shoot us a personal message to our Instagrams at The Next Level Show. My personal page is at John Alba Fitness. Gabe, he's at Prime and Glory, and Mike is at Mike Nillis PT.